How's it going, everybody? It's Pilot Flame, and we are back with another FPL video. And today, it's wildcard time. We're going to be looking at my thoughts on the Game Week 9 wildcard. I am personally on a wildcard myself. So what we'll do is we'll go through the watch list, which I have updated for all the players that I'm considering on the wildcard or thereabouts. So hopefully I haven't missed any. And then we'll go through what draft I'm looking to do. And then we'll look on FPL.team and see how that draft can develop for the 8 game weeks or so leading up to the World Cup, where then we get another wild card again after the World Cup has started. So we'll take a look at all of those things, compile it all together, and see what we come up with for the Game Week 9 wild card. If you haven't done so already, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe channel if you are new, and turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Also drop us a follow over on Twitter so you can keep up to date with any, FPL news, and give us a follow over on Twitch so you can join us live for our preview and deadline streams. We did a preview stream on Monday. The VOD was out yesterday at the time of recording this. Wednesday evening. So this will probably either be coming out Wednesday evening or also on potentially on Thursday. But we will be doing a deadline stream on the Saturday, 1 hour before the FPL deadline, where I'll be finalizing my wildcard, so you won't want to miss that as well. Now, without further ado, let's see what the watch list is shaping up to be for the Game Week 9 wildcard. So let's start off with our watch list here. A total of 29 players from goalkeeper all the way up to the forwards. We've also blanked out our FPL team as well, and you can see the money that we have remaining. Some of that will change based on who we have. I mean, we're probably not going to get rid of certain players. Those are they're pretty common, but others we will potentially get rid of or swap and change around, and ignore the team currently in that is basically grayed out at the moment, that I've taken all the players out of, because some of those players are there just for price changes and that sort of stuff. And we're going to be mainly looking at the group of players that I put in the watch list. So let's go through them. So let's start with the goalkeepers. I think based on pretty much any strategy that I'm going to go for, I'm either going to go for Guaita, Raya, and Pope as my mainstay goalkeeper, and then one of the 3 cheap goalkeepers, whether Iverson gets his place, if Ward keeps his place, or if I like Begovic. And basically the cheaper goalkeeper is going to fulfill one purpose and one purpose only. When Guaita plays Chelsea, I don't want to play him, so I'm going to pick someone who isn't that. And Begovic has a good fixture versus Southampton, and also Ward has a decent fixture versus Nottingham Forest at home, and hopefully they can turn it around, and it should be an easier run of fixtures for Leicester. We'll be getting a Leicester asset on the wildcard as well. So I'm just going to put in Begovic just for the argument's sake. If blanking on his name here, Jordan Pickford is back. Although he didn't play on international duty, Begovic will play. Got himself 9 points in the game versus West Ham. Although I think Patterson is out, we'll come to him in the defenders, because he's one of the cheaper defenders I was potentially looking at. That could cause an issue for clean sheets and that sort of stuff. So maybe Begovic isn't the way to go, but we'll just throw him in there just because he is a 4 million. We'll have some type of 4 million goalkeeper in there somewhere. Then the 3 goalkeepers. I think Raya is probably the weakest out of the 3 in terms of fixtures. His initial fixture is very good, but then has a tough run of 3, and then has 3 decent ones, but then has Man City to end it all off. So a bit of a mixed bag for him. Whereas Guaita has just the 1 bad fixture versus Chelsea, and then a nice sea of green. And even if we wanted to keep him for the couple of fixtures after the World Cup, he has Fulham and Bournemouth, which is nice to see as well. So that's going to be interesting, and it is going to be one of these things where we have a wild card, we then get to wild card again in the World Cup, and then after the new year we get to wild card again if we really needed to. We'll probably save that for double game weeks of some kind, but there is that chance to do that. Or maybe we could just book in a transfer to get rid of Guaita afterwards, because his tough run does end in game week 19, and maybe we just have a short-term punt with both him and Zaha. Or there's maybe a better goalkeeper that emerges there. But at the moment, I think Nick Pope is probably only good for just the 2. He made a clanger in the game versus Germany, so I don't think that's going to do him any good, personally. And I think that Guaita long-term is going to be probably the better option in terms of value. 0.7 cheaper, has a great run of fixtures. Don't have to worry about him against the likes of Man United or Spurs, who are likely to score in those games, I would have thought. So I'm going to put Guaita in the team at the moment. So very cheap in goal there. So Moving on to the defenders. So João Cancelo doesn't really need to be explained, but I'll make it short and brief. He's Man City's best defender. Man City are arguably the best team in the league at the moment, probably the best team in Europe. And João Cancelo is kind of good. It doesn't matter if he has a blank versus after the Liverpool game and in game week 12. It doesn't matter. We can basically circumvent that, and you'll see that later on. So he's going to stay into the team as well. Reece James is another one. I mean, pretty straightforward. It's just Reece James. Chelsea have good fixtures. I'm curious to look at another Chelsea defender, potentially, if we can get one that emerges. Maybe if Cucurella does start playing left wing back a lot for Graham Potter, and Sterling's maybe used in the front too, that might help out. But for now, I think Reece James is the only one we can kind of stick to at the moment. So we're going to put Reece James back in the team. And then thirdly, I think it's basically a toss-up here because I'm going to go two cheaper defenders. I think one of those is definitely going to be Nico Williams. I think he is just so good for his price. He'll be constantly starting, for us if we need him to come in on some games, like in these, a couple of fixtures towards the end, where fixtures start to change or be a little bit trickier around that time just before the international break. He's almost certainly... actually, no, he might be going on international duty. I can't remember what nationality he actually is. But if we might need him in that role. And he's just been so good for a lot of FPL managers. I haven't owned him this season, but he's definitely going to go in there for me. Another consideration was Emerson. But I think his minutes could be a bit of a risk, and West Ham just aren't very good at the moment, as well as the fact that Patterson is also injured was another one that I was looking at, but he's going to be out till, I think, end of October, which is unfortunate because Everton were looking quite good. The cheap defenders, I think Mark Gahey definitely comes into consideration. Crystal Palace have fantastic defensive fixtures. He's a stalwart in there, 4.3 million. I think you just can't go wrong with that price point, and we'll use him sparingly when we need him. And then Wesley Fofana is another one that I've kind of considered, but again, will he start game in, game out? We'll have to wait and see. How many defenders is Graham Potter going to play? Is he going to play with a back three, a back two? What's he going to do? I think that's maybe a wait and see on that one, which is why I have a few players in the Chelsea watch list that I'm kind of slowly keeping my eye on. And then we have Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I think is going to be the last defender over Kieran Trippier. I think Kieran Trippier is quite good, but I just don't see Newcastle keeping clean sheets as well as what they were at the start of the season, especially versus Fulham and Brentford and Man United, who all have the ability to score goals. Same with Tottenham, and I think that Everton's probably the only one that they could keep a clean sheet versus, maybe because Everton have just been a bit light up front. But Bournemouth scored against them, so that's not really helping them out too much. We will be having a Newcastle asset in the team, though. That's further up the pitch, though. A little bit of a spoiler. So I'm probably going to steer away from Kieran Trippier. I think Trent is probably going to provide better value, and even with the the rough-ish fixtures here, I think versus Arsenal, Liverpool always do well. Versus Brighton at home, Brighton don't typically score very many to begin with, even under Graham Potter, now with the new manager. And then Man City, anything can happen in this game. I'm not expecting much anyway, but anything could possibly happen. And then Liverpool have a good set of fixtures, with just the Spurs away fixture being the only probably difficult one in that run of 5 before the World Cup. And Trent didn't play on international duty, so bodes well for his fitness. Moving into the midfield, we'll talk about the premiums in a second. Gabriel Martinelli, I don't think he really needs much of an explanation. He's gone up crazy in value. If we were to get rid of him, we would lose 0.3 on him, which is a lot to be losing. But I think with Arsenal's fixtures, Spurs at home, it's not a bad fixture. Liverpool at home, that's going to be a bit tough. Leeds should be fine, and then a blank, and then 2 good fixtures versus Southampton and Forest. But I think Gabriel Martinelli's price is just so good. I think he's probably the one Arsenal asset you can probably keep in your team at the moment. So he stays in for us. And then we have the likes of our mid-price midfielders. We got Wilfried Zaha. Again, Crystal Palace fixtures is on penalties, although I'm not very convinced when he does take a penalty, so he's going to go in there as well. Andreas Pereira, just super cheap budget midfielder. Fulham have good fixtures, especially 11 through 14, so we're going to keep him as well. He's going to go in there. James Madison is another one that's on the watch list here. we have a great run of fixtures here from Game Week 9 through Game Week 13. We can then ditch him after the Wolves away game, or if he gets injured or anything like that, because we can move to pretty much any midfielder in that 8 million price bracket. We can get Luis Diaz if he's looking good. We can get Phil Foden. We can go back to Bukayo Saka if we want to go for him when they go to play Forest. I think it's around this time as well. Madison just looks to be kind of the only real shining light for Leicester, and if he's going to do it, he's going to definitely do it in these fixtures, so we're going to throw Madison into the team. And then there's that one last spot in the premium location for midfielders. So currently I have Kevin De Bruyne in there at the moment, and I think the rotation between him, Son, and Salah could be key over the next few set of fixtures up until the World Cup. I would like probably Salah for this week, but I think that the value on De Bruyne currently, if he were to go up again, we obviously get to gain the 0.1. That's also nice. It is a home fixture versus Manchester United, and on a derby day, you expect De Bruyne to probably excel in that, although it pains me to say it, that I'm going to have 3 Man City players in my team versus United. If United win 1-0, I'm probably going to be doing cartwheels around the house, but that's a different thing altogether. But yeah, Kevin De Bruyne has just been looking so good. And I think the Southampton at home fixture is the real kind of kicker there as well. So we'll get him for the 2 home fixtures. I think he's going to be the one in there. The other 2 is obviously Heung-min Son, who we would look to bring in Game Week 12. We would have him play versus Everton at home, and then he would stay in probably for Man United away when De Bruyne has Liverpool away, which is tricky, and then a blank. Salah in the same vein would have Man City at home, but he would have West Ham at home. Now, if we can get Salah in for this in Game Week 12, which we'll try to look at in the tinkering section, that would be good, because then we can have Salah basically up until the Southampton game, and then the World Cup, which he will not be participating in because Egypt didn't make it. So a little bit of a rest for him as well. So if we wanted to keep him on our wild card, we could, because he has 2 good fixtures afterwards as well. Aston Villa don't score many goals and are kind of not the greatest team at, like, all things considered this season, and Leicester just concede goals for fun. So, and they might have a new manager by then as well if Brendan Rodgers doesn't pick it up. So we're going with De Bruyne at the moment. Then in the forwards, Erling Haaland, I mean, doesn't really need any explanation, does he? We're going to throw him straight in there. Mitrovic looked like he picked up an injury, one to keep an eye on, and we'll show you how we'll potentially get him back in 2 weeks' time when Newcastle at home and West Ham away. Potentially trickier fixtures are out of the way. Ivan Toney gone up in price last night. I like his fixture this week, but again with Brentford, 10 through 12 could be a bit tricky. I like Dominic Solanke. I think his price point is good, 5.7 million, and it would just be for these 3 fixtures. 3 fixtures at home, and then Fulham away is probably one of the easier fixtures. Then we can use him to downgrade him and get about $1 million and a bit out of him so that we can upgrade for Salah if need be. We can show you how we're going to do that when we get to the tinkering stage. So I'm going to throw Solanke in there. And then Isak was one that we wanted to put in the team. Unfortunately, it looks like he's going to be injured. Callum Wilson is back, and he's set to basically go straight back into the team. So Callum Wilson is someone I really, really like. 2 goals in the first 3 games. He looks to be someone who we can have. Hopefully he doesn't get injured in these first 2 fixtures, because that would be great. Fulham away, Brentford at home. We expect him to do well in those games. So we'll throw him straight in there. 2 players I am keeping an eye on, though, for later down the line is Darwin Nunez for Liverpool's good set of fixtures, and then Aubameyang on how he does, because 9 million could be a good price point. Jesus is another one which we could potentially get back in around this price point. That price point is really what I'm kind of looking at further down the line. So that is what the team looks like at the moment. This is the draft I've kind of gone with. We got 0.2 million in the bank, and I like it a lot. I like it a lot, and we can be quite flexible with what we want to send out team-wise, and we have coverage on the bench if need be, as we basically have all of our players that could potentially start in our forward line, our midfield, and our defense, because Nico Williams and Guehi are firm starters for that good price. Solanke is basically the main guy at Bournemouth. Wilson, assuming he's not injured, will play. We assume Andreas Pereira could play, and then everyone else is probably going to play because they're pretty much talismanic-like players for the team. Begovic obviously being the only exception, but we only need him for the one game week, and if we know that Ward or Begovic is going to play, we'll just pick the one that we know is going to play. So that's what the team looks like. We have 0.2 million in the bank. So if we swap this over to the transfer planner here, and we're going to be flipping between the two. This is FPL.team, a fantastic website where you can kind of check and see what your team is looking like per game week. So this is what the fixtures will look like if we were to make those transfers. We would put Begovic in, as an example, in goal. Ignore the bank. We're going to look at that when we go on the transfer screen and we keep swapping between the two. So this team would be set for 2 game weeks. So what will it look like this week? We'll probably captain Holland, Madison outside captaincy shout. We would have Andreas Pereira probably on the bench, playing second fiddle to the likes of Martinelli, who I think still at home is, like Arsenal at home it's just a very good fixture. So we'll go with that. Moving on to the next game week 10. This is what it'll look like. We have, a good set of fixtures here. Yes, we have Martinelli playing against Trent, but I think that's perfectly fine. Then we have Mark Gahey and Nico Williams have good fixtures, which they could come in if we wanted to, or if like a player were to get injured or, potentially be rotated. That's something that we can kind of cover. We would probably move them probably slightly up in the pecking order here, but you're not going to play them over Cancelo and Reece James, who both have home fixtures against teams that don't score very many goals. Our midfield looks pretty good. Again, Martinelli is, if he looks like he's going to be benched, then maybe we bring in one of our defenders here. And then our forwards all have home fixtures as well. Those are looking quite strong, so really happy with that. Again, probably a Haaland captaincy show or De Bruyne versus Southampton. So we bank that transfer. We then go into game week 11. We now have 2 free transfers available. Well, we now have Man City and Liverpool playing against each other. So what can we do? Well, we wanted to get Son because Son has Everton at home. So let's see if we can do that if we do it in the transfers here. So we get rid of Kevin De Bruyne. We may gain a 0.1 extra because if De Bruyne does go up one more time when we have him, then we gain the 0.1. So we bring in Son. Would be the pick there. And his fixtures we want him for are these 2 right here. It is going to not feel great to get rid of him for Newcastle at home, Bournemouth away, but it's for a arguably as good of, if not a better player, Mo Salah, and we'll talk about that in a bit. This is where Mitrovic would come back in. Mitrovic would come in here. He would be coming in for these run of 4 games here, 11 through 14. This is where we really want him and want him available for that. So because West Ham could be tricky, Newcastle could be tricky. West Ham's going to be a team that's going to be very good defensively, set piece wise, as is Newcastle most likely, as they have the likes of Dan Burn and Sven Botman and these sorts of players who are quite tall and quite good at warding off those sorts of kind of threats like Mitrovic, although Mitrovic just seems to score from set pieces a lot. So we have the 1 million. So that's fine. That would be the transfers that we would make. So Wilson would make way. Mitrovic would come in. So Mitrovic comes in. Bang, there we go, into the team. Andreas Pereira could potentially make his way into the team for somebody. He's probably going to end up first sub, though, if we wanted to just kind of back Fulham, but we think Solanke is probably slightly better than him, to be honest, because Solanke did score quite a few goals in the championship, and Fulham is effectively a championship team, as they did come up from the championship. So Son goes in. Andreas Pereira would go to first sub, and that's how the team would play out. Who we captain this week? Very interesting, actually. Probably would be Mitrovic, maybe, versus Bournemouth at home. Maybe Madison, maybe Zaha versus Leicester away. That's up for debate. I'll put it on Mitrovic just as kind of like a wait and see. But that would be our 2 transfers. Then the following week, Man City do not play a game, and neither do Arsenal because they both blank. Well, we can basically supplement that quite easily. We can bring in Andreas Pereira in for Martinelli. We could bring in Nico Williams for João Cancelo. And we can bring in Mark Gahey for Erling Haaland. Captaincy this week is going to be a bit difficult. I think it's going to either be Zaha or Madison. Most likely, maybe an outside shout for Trent Alexander-Arnold. But I think that team is perfectly fine. And we can roll another transfer. If we have any issues, then we can pick and choose for that. Then we move into game week 13. This is where we can start making some serious changes. So Solanke's bad run starts, or at least a couple of bad games start. So what we would do is we would downgrade him. We would go to a cheap forward like Archer as an example. We'll swap him out for Martinelli. And then Son would make way for Salah, who plays against Nottingham Forest, who's probably a much easier team to score against than Brighton, probably. So Salah would become our captain. Cancelo would come back into the team over Nico Williams. We would also bring Haaland back in over Mark Guéhi, who's probably unfortunate to miss out. I would think Guéhi would move up to first sub, most likely. I'll even put Archer second sub because we don't want Nico Williams coming on at all. Andres Pereira versus Leeds, I think it's probably fine. Maybe Mark Guéhi goes in. That's kind of a bit of a toss-up there. But I think Salah would probably be our captain for this one. And we can definitely do those transfers. Get rid of Son. Bring in Salah. Get rid of Solanke. Bring in Archer, who's 4.3. I mean, we don't need to really change him all off the watch list, but we can see that we have the money available there. Then it would be game week 14. We're then looking at Salah versus Leeds at home. This is where we can get a little bit creative with our potential midfield slot. So, because Madison has Man City at home, again, not the greatest fixture. Andres Pereira plays the Everton team, which is a bit tricky to kind of break down. So maybe Guéhi comes in over him for a potential clean sheet versus Southampton. This is where we could potentially get rid of Madison, even though he has kind of like that set piece kind of out of nowhere sort of ordeal. Then maybe we can go for that. I do like Man City's two fixtures to end off, though, Brentford and Fulham. So maybe De Bruyne comes back in for those two. Arsenal do play against Nottingham Forest, so maybe Saka's one to kind of consider. We also have Diaz, who could come in versus Leeds if we think that he's going to start. That would be the triple up there. I personally like the way Saka's been playing, especially for England as well, so maybe we can go for him. Foden is also consideration, but if we want to go De Bruyne over, if we wanted to get rid of like Salah as an example, that would leave our options at least open. Saka's fixture the following week isn't the greatest, but we can swap him out for Foden if we want to afterwards. So this would be something that we go for. This would be a pretty difficult call, actually. Leicester, if they continue to play bad, Haaland would be a good option, but I think Salah versus Leeds could be a good pick as well. Again, we would definitely have the money because it's basically a like-for-like swap. Saka's currently cheaper than Madison. Moving on to game week 15, we would then have a bunch of players on the bench that we don't really want to play apart from Nico Williams. He would probably come in maybe over the likes of Mark Guéhi, just because he has a home fixture, and we can kind of, hedge our bets on the defense there for Guaita and Guéhi not playing at as the same defense. This is where potentially we could get rid of Mitrovic if we wanted to, or we could basically revert to a Man City midfielder here as well. Salah has Spurs away and then Southampton at home, but I think if we go De Bruyne, I think that also kind of bodes well. I also think that Mitrovic can just score he'll probably score versus City, like almost certainly. So maybe this is where De Bruyne can come in back into the team. Haaland will get the captaincy. Shall we go all in on City versus Fulham, who will probably concede a couple of goals to them as well. Again, Saka versus Chelsea as well as Martinelli, not the greatest, but we can definitely make do there. Trent versus Spurs, again, not great. Same with Reece James, also playing two guys in our team as well. Again, not ideal. If we wanted to keep Salah and then we wanted to go like Foden beforehand, then we save ourselves a transfer. But that's something we can consider probably further down the line. And then lastly, game week 16, we could just kind of go for a punt here. Maybe it's just Mitrovic out for one of the forwards. I think we're close enough to whereas we can get like Darwin Nunez or somebody like that. We would be 0.1 off. If we made some sell value, then maybe we can get something somewhere. But he could come in potentially for the Southampton home fixture and kind of cover Liverpool a little bit more. We would probably put in Mark Guéhi versus over Nico Williams. I think Crystal Palace is probably the slightly better team. And Holland would be our captain again in this one. But yeah, I know there's a 0.1 there, but potential sale value on a couple of the players. Like if Solanke scores in the first game that he plays, he could potentially go up by 0.2 pretty quickly because he is a very cheap price at the moment. Started off at 6 million, is now down to 5.7. So that's something to kind of take into consideration. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. Let me know what you think. What do you think of my draft? Do you think there's any holes or weaknesses in it? Me personally, I think I'm lacking a little bit on the light side for the Spurs assets, because I do like the fact that Son came on, had a point to prove, and we do want him. And the only two fixtures we're going to have him for is Everton at home and Man United away with this current strategy. Maybe we might be tempted to keep him longer if Liverpool continue to underperform. Do you think I should keep Trent, or should I downgrade him to the likes of Trippier and spread the money a little bit elsewhere as well? Let me just think down in the comments below. Also post your wildcard drafts as well. If you're wildcarding Gameweek 9, let me know those as well, or tweet them at me and that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's going to do it for our Gameweek 9 wildcard thoughts. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Scout members area, the one place that you need to be tuned into for the upcoming FPL season. It has a wide variety of resources and tools that will help improve your FPL game today. It has a bunch of different members-only articles written by some of the best FPL managers across the globe, heat maps for all the players and positions, as well as player comparison tools, which will help you see side by side who is going to be more effective for your FPL team, fully customizable stats tables powered by Opta stats, and much, much more. Use the link down in the description below so that you can get access to the Fantasy Football Scout members area today. It'll help improve your FPL game. This video has been sponsored by Manscaped, the best in male below-the-waist grooming. Make sure to check out manscaped.com so you can see the latest and greatest updates to their lawnmower, as well as their performance package, and much, much more for all their gadgets and gizmos to help keep your family jewels looking as shiny as ever. Make sure to use the code FLAME20 so that you can get 20% off your next Manscaped order, as well as free worldwide shipping. Go check out manscaped.com today. And that's going to do it for our wildcard thoughts for Game Week 9. If you haven't done so already, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe channel if you are new, and turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Also, drop us a follow over on Twitter so you can keep up to date with any and all FPL news, and give us a follow over on Twitch so you can join us live for our preview and deadline streams, where I will be finalizing my wildcard over on Twitch this Saturday. Make sure to check the pinned comment down below. It will give you the link for the stream, as well as the time as when we will go live. But it will be 1 hour before the FPL deadline closes for Game Week 9. You won't want to miss that as well. Thank you all for watching, and until the next one, take care.